Hello everybody and welcome back to another great edition of Pac-12 Chalk Talk, your source for everything Pac-12 sports. I'm your host, Austin Controlis, and in studio tonight we have our beautiful panel from left to right, Nick Merrick, Mariah Baker, and Robbie Baker. Okay guys, even though we've got a long way to go until football season, we do have to pay attention to last week's National Signing Day. Nick, start us off. What do you think was the biggest surprise from last week?
Well, Austin, that's a great question, and what I want to say is, where was Oregon? They were really nowhere to be found in the Pac-12. They're kind of buried below USC, Stanford, and UCLA. It's a team that only brought in 3 top 150 recruits, according to ESPN. That's something that they're not looking to do. They brought in a running back, a wide receiver, and the third best offensive line. But again, they're not addressing the defensive issues. Out of all the 4 stars they brought in, only one of those players was a defensive player. And are they really going to expect to win games by giving up 38 points in BCS games? I certainly hope not. And they're going to have to look for some shoes to fill with Darren Thomas and LaMichael James now out the door and heading to the NFL.
My biggest surprise has to go to Cal. They took some big losses, losing Shaq Thompson to Washington, but they also got some good players as well. Darius Powell, he's a 6'2", 190-pound wide receiver. He's tall, he's fast, he's agile. He could be a good combo for those Bears.
Well, first of all, I'm glad to have the stools back because I need all the height advantage that I can get with my size. But my biggest surprise for recruiting day and signing day was ASU. Todd Graham had a limited time in recruiting his players. He did a great job. He brought in 5 4-star recruits. The biggest, in my opinion, was DJ Foster, the 4-star running back from in-state out of Saguaro. He had a monster senior year. When the coaching change came, a lot of people thought that he probably was going to not come to ASU, but Todd Graham did a great job of getting him to come. Also, Evan Goodman, the tackle out of Florida, was a big name, a 4-star lineman recruit coming to kind of try to bolster an offensive line that's losing a lot of seniors for the draft. So I thought ASU did a great job on signing day.
Last week we introduced fact or fiction to the show, and this week we have another new game, What's the Word? Each of our panelists will give us one word that best describes a given situation. So Mariah, we'll start with you. What's your word for how signing day went as a whole for the Pac-12?
Austin, there's one word, average, for that. I think it's an average day for an average conference. We saw Stanford beef up their O-line a little bit. As I mentioned before, Cal, they got Darius Powell, they got Zach Klein. Arizona State came up big with Foster there at the end, but overall I would say it was an average day.
Yeah, I feel much the same. My word actually for signing day was meh. It was nothing great about it. I saw there was 8 5-star recruits total that went to Pac-12 schools, and Oregon, like Merrick mentioned, no 5-star recruits. They have the shiny helmets. They have the cool uniforms. They couldn't pull a 5-star recruit. I was shocked by this. Also, a majority of the signees for the Pac-12 were 3 stars or lower. That's not going to really be the talent this conference needs in the future to compete with conferences like the SEC and the Big Ten.
Well, I'm going to feed off both of you guys, and my word's actually MIA. Is first time in over 10 years that no Pac-10 team or Pac-12 team now has been inside the top 10 classes for high school recruiting. Certainly something that's taken a drop. If you do look at rivals, however, both USC and Stanford were apparent in the top 10. But overall, they're kind of competing with each other, and you threw out some names. They're stealing recruits from each other. So overall, the Pac-12 is a conference. They do have 6 schools in the top 25, but the ACC has 3 in the top 10, and the SEC has 3 in the top 5. Those are the programs that are making the difference. They're the ones going out grabbing recruits from the East Coast, and the Pac-12 is kind of missing.
Switching gears to basketball, I want to hear from Robbie first. What's your word for how the University of Arizona played in the Bay Area last week?
Well, I know the segment asked for a word. I decided to go for more of a phrase, and my phrase is, I see you, U of A. I see you, because I said that the Wildcats would beat Cal, and they did. They won 78-74 on the road. They beat Stanford 56-43. Like I said, both those games on the road, big victories. This team right now sits in about the 5 spot, I believe, in the Pac-12, but they can move up if they keep getting these victories. They have home games this week that if they could win both of these home games, they could easily bump up into that top 3 in the Pac-12.
Well, Robbie, I'm going to go, my word for this one of Arizona's performance was revived, because if you look at them in their first non-conference games, they end up taking 4 losses right now in conference. They're currently sitting at 7-4, and now they have a chance to actually jump the Buffaloes and move into second place in the Pac-12. They had a huge accomplishment this past weekend, picking up victories against Stanford and Cal on the road. So we're going to see what they're going to have in mind, but certainly getting scoring from a bunch of different players. And in the last weekend, at least 3 players had double-digit scoring, and that was the difference for the Wildcats.
And my word has to go to Foggy, and I say this for no other reason than for senior guard Kyle Fogg. He was the difference in this game. He hit the go-ahead 3 in the final minute to play, ultimately scoring 23 points that game. Then he travels down to Stanford, racks up 14 points in that game. It's going to be a foggy season for those Wildcats if he continues to lead this team.
So, Robbie, you're automatically eliminated for cheating and going with more than one word. But, Nick, our final What's the Word goes to you. What's the word that best describes Washington's chances to win the Pac-12?
I feel like this is going to be a bit of a discussion between us, as my word is promising, as Washington has won 8 of their last 9 games, which is something that they're really feeding off last year's one win in the NCAA tournament. They did end up losing to North Carolina, which is a great basketball school in Chapel Hill. But certainly Washington in the Pac-12 has their chances. If they could survive this weekend against Oregon, they really only have 2 more tests, and that's home against Arizona and against UCLA. But other than that, if they could coast to a championship, they're really getting it rolling. The one thing I'm concerned about is they're 62% from the free throw line. That needs to change.
My word has to go to premature. I think to say this soon that Washington can get it done is unpredictable. This conference fluctuates up and down. They have a strong zone defense. We saw that be very effective last weekend, but ultimately this is a scrappy conference.
See, I'll play by the rules here for Austin's sake, and I'm going to go with outstanding. I think they have an outstanding chance of winning this conference. I look at them, and they are a mentally tough team. There's something about this team that no matter how hard they try to lose games, they still manage to win them. Whether they're down late in a game and they come back, or they're kind of losing a big lead, they hold on to it. They're a mentally tough team. They have 3 players that average double digits. There's a big spread of talent on that team, and I think they have an outstanding chance of winning the conference.
We're going to move over to one of the more exciting games of the past week, UCLA at Washington. Despite being down 10 in the final 7 minutes, the Huskies came back to beat the Bruins 69-71. Mariah, what was the key for UW coming back in this game? 2
words, Terrence Ross for me. He had 10 of the last 12 points in that game, ultimately leading Washington to the victory. His 22 points that game, he got 18 of them in the second half. UCLA, they had a 10-point lead going into the final minutes, but ultimately they couldn't get it done against the Huskies' zone defense.
This Washington team, they just wait to pounce on a team is what, in my opinion, they do. C.J. Wilcox came up huge as this game came down the stretch. He had 4 points. He had a steal. He had a big defensive rebound. Ultimately, Washington just waits to make the plays they have to win games, and they do down the stretch.
Now, I might sound like a hypocrite after what I just said, but maybe Washington is proving my point, is free throws, and more free throws. That was the difference. They're down by 10 points, 7 minutes to go, hit 6 freebies in a row, brought them within 6 points, and then, Mariah, you mentioned it, that's when Terrence Ross took the leadership to the next level. He scored 10 of the team's last 12 points in that final 5-minute span, and that was really what was able to bolster them and get the victory at a tough UCLA team.
All right, guys, it's time for everyone's Player of the Week. Nick, who do you have?
Well, when you look at this one, it was between going with offense or defense, and I really wanted to focus on the offensive side. And for me, it was Andre Roberson. He had 23 points, 26 rebounds, 9 blocks, 64% shooting from the court. If it wasn't for his presence on the defensive end and his shot blocking ability, that 1-point victory against Oregon might have been the other way around. And also looking at it, he had the defensive rebound with 7 seconds left in that game and then ended up dishing it off to his teammate who was able to sink 1 free throw. So if it wasn't for his heroics, Colorado might not be found in the Pac-12.
And my player has to go to Josh Smith. He did big things against Washington, ultimately scored 24 points. He had 9 rebounds there. He took his talents down to Wazoo, racked up almost as many points and just as many rebounds. He's a big guy in the paint doing big things.
And I almost don't even want to say anything about my Player of the Week because I just want to have his stats speak for himself. But I went with Brock Modem. Modem is a manimal. He is half man, half animal right now. He scored 26 points against USC in a win. In that game, he shot 82% from the field. That is ridiculous. And against UCLA, he put up 25 points. This was another close game for Wazoo. They lost by 3, but it was a game that they could have won. He shot 50% in that game. Brock Modem, easily Player of the Week.
We're now finished with the week that was, and now we're going to look at the week that will be. Some of the big games coming up, guys. On Thursday, Utah, Arizona State, Cal at USC, Stanford at UCLA. Moving over to Saturday, Cal at UCLA, a big rivalry, and then Washington at Oregon State on Sunday. Time to take a look at what our panelists think is the best game coming up this Thursday. Mariah, what game are you most excited for, and which team do you expect to come out ahead?
You know, I have to go with the Stanford-UCLA game. It's hard for me not to watch a big guy like Josh Smith go against a fundamentally sound Stanford defense. If Stanford can complement their defense with an offense, which we saw them struggle last weekend offensively, but if they can complement, they can chalk up the W.
Yeah, the game I'm really excited to watch is the Colorado U of A game. Colorado's the 3 seed, U of A is the 5 seed. U of A really needs a victory, and I think that they'll get it. I think what fans should do is sit back and just watch Solomon Hill go to work, watch the Solomon Hill show, and watch U of A get the victory.
Well, Robbie, I'm actually stealing your picks, and I'm going to go with that same game because if you look at it, Colorado has been dominant at home, but now it's going to be a test to see how they can handle Arizona down in Tucson, Arizona, which is going to be a fun match as both these teams are in the top half of the Pac-12, and it's going to have certain meaning for the conference title come later in this month. But it's going to be hard fought between both teams, and if you look at it, it may be another UCLA-Washington style of game, but I'm going to give the slight edge to Wildcats.
Now on to our weekend games. Robbie, which game are you looking forward to this weekend?
I'm really excited for the Washington State-Oregon game. Oregon is a surprise team right now, sitting in that upper 6 of the Pac-12, which I was surprised by after their performance last year. And really, the reason I want to watch this game is I want to see if Brock Modem can continue to do what he's been doing. 25 points or more in his last 3 games. That's ridiculous, and I think he will do that again and put up big numbers against Oregon, and Wazoo will get the win.
And you know, Robbie, I would agree. I went with Washington at Oregon State as well. I'm interested to see Roten versus Cunningham, and I'm interested to see the big guys down low, Nade versus Moreland. 2 big guys, 2 great shooters. It should be a good matchup.
I must be stealing picks tonight because I had the same exact one, Mariah, where I'm interested to see if Oregon State can create the upset alert. You're looking at them, they're 6th best in the nation in terms of scoring per game, and behind Jared Cunningham, who averages 18 points a game in the Pac-12. Pretty darn good for a team in Corvallis that's looking to make some spark and come back into it, and certainly might be a lottery pick should he go to the NBA. So check out for that upset.
We have come to the end of another episode of Pac-12 Chalk Talk. To stay connected with the Pac-12, be sure to follow Chalk Talk on Twitter, Facebook, and subscribe right here on YouTube. For Nick Merrick, Mariah Baker, and Robbie Baker, I'm Austin Controlis, and we'll see you next week.